tractors rolled up the gravel lane to Stillwater Farm, and the late summer sun looked tired, like it had been watching this land for too many years. The house sat in a shallow dip of earth behind a ribbon of withered corn, its paint the color of old bones, its windows reflecting a ponding sky. 5 people climbed out of the SUV and stood in a sloppy half-circle, breathing in dust and old memory. Daniel, the dad; Maria, the mom; Jake, a 17-year-old whose restlessness had edges; Emma, 12, all elbows and curiosity; and Nana Rose, whose thin frame could have been carried off by the prairie wind if the wind had bothered to finish a sentence. Gravel whispered and popped beneath their shoes as they moved toward the porch. Somewhere out across the field, a single cow bawled a rough, hollow bellow that sounded older than the fence posts. From the hedgerow, crickets stitched a constant needling chirr that filled the gaps between one breath and the next. "It's smaller than I imagined," Maria said, shading her eyes. "It's land," Daniel answered, as if that settled everything. "Land remembers how to give back if you learn how to ask." Jake nudged a clump of weeds with his sneaker. "Or it remembers the people who took too much." Nana Rose's gaze stuck to the barn, 2 stories of sun-silvered timber and a mouth of darkness for a doorway. "Your granduncle used to keep the corn thresher in there," she said. "He sharpened the hoe on a flat stone by the wall." She blinked. "He kept a ledger of every crop, every broken tooth on a gear, every fence mended." A faint thud traveled the yard, like something heavy settling in the barn's belly. A loose sheet of tin on the roof gave a tired clack-clack in the breeze, like a cheap applause that didn't belong to anything living. Emma pointed. "Look, the light's on." Everyone turned. The barn sat in haze and shadow. No light, only darkness pooled like water. And the thought of light there felt like a trick the mind plays when it wants reassurance. "There's no electricity out here yet," Daniel said, but he didn't sound convinced. The realtor had promised the line would be run next week, after county inspection, after paperwork, after 100 tiny adult verbs that Emma tried not to hear. They carried boxes up onto the porch. The front door sighed when Daniel forced it, and the smell of shut-in years rolled over them old coffee mouse nests, oil that had hardened in its can. The staircase lifted into darkness, the banister polished by generations of hands. In the parlor, a dust sheet lay over a couch that remembered strangers. On the mantel sat a clock with no pendulum and a jar of rusted nails. As the door swung wide, the hinges let out a slurred moan, long and damp like breath funneled through a reed. Somewhere in the walls, something skittered quick, dry feet racing inside the ribcage of the house. From the kitchen, the faint metallic tick-tick of a loose chain tapping a pipe kept time with nobody's heartbeat. Emma found the pantry and a row of jars clouded with years. She traced letters on one: pickled peppers, 1981. The farmhouse felt like a place where time had tried to leave, but changed its mind. "Kids, unload the back," Maria called. "Jake, be careful with the box marked Fragile Nanas." "Emma, you can take the bedding." "I want to see the barn," Emma said. After Maria said the kind of "after that" meant maybe never. Daniel set down the tool chest and put his hand on the kitchen table. It had been scrubbed so often the wood had turned to silk. He frowned at the pattern of shallow cuts that repeated around the table's edge. "Somebody sharpened something here," he said. From outside, the sound of a hoe biting soil. Chunk paused. Chunk hopped across the yard in a rhythm too careful to be wind. A second later, a cow's lowing rolled in again. But this time, it broke into a strained, gargling rattle that died off all at once, like a hand had pressed the voice flat. Jake snapped to attention. "Tell me you heard that." "I heard the highway," Daniel said, though the highway was 4 miles and 2 turns away. They worked. The day slid along its rail. The shadows lengthened, and the house filled with their new life, the way a well fills with dark water, slow, patient, inevitable. In the barn, a rope somewhere high creaked one heavy, aching syllable, and then stilled as if whoever had been swinging decided to stop. A dull metal jangle followed the clink-clink of chain against a hook, faint as memory and stubborn as a cough that wouldn't go. Nana Rose took Emma's hand. "Let's walk the boundary." They followed the fence line where the wire had been patched with wire and then patched again with hope. Red-winged blackbirds flashed over the ditch like tossed matches. Nana told Emma about harvest dances, about neighbors who came to lift walls and share stew. She told her about a man who'd leased the North Quarter, a tenant farmer whose name nobody wrote down because he wasn't meant to stay. He stayed, Nana said. "What happened to him?" Emma asked. Nana's fingers worried the pearl of her earring, not to remove it, just to feel its roundness. "He wouldn't leave," she said. "He had a wife and a son. The owner wanted them gone. One night after too many whiskeys, someone set fire to their hay. There was a fight. In the morning, there was a hole dug for fence posts, and by noon, there was a rumor the tenant farmer hadn't been seen. Neither had the owner's temper. A crow flapped up from the field with a rasping caw-caw, dragging a ribbon of silence behind it. From the direction of the old silo, wind wound itself into a low flute tone, a breath through a bottle's mouth that made Emma's forearms rise in goose flesh. "Did the sheriff come?" Emma asked. Nana's smile was thin as bale twine. The sheriff was the owner's brother. They reached the corner post and stood. The land sagged into a little swale where weeds grew greener, like something buried there watered the roots. The evening had started to blue. The sun bled low behind the cottonwoods and turned their leaves into coins, flashing before they go out. Across the pasture, the tractor coughed once a choked gasoline sour hack, and then felt quiet, as if ashamed. An answering groan traveled the barn's beams, old timber speaking in a throat full of sawdust. "There's no fuel in that thing," Daniel called when they came back. I checked. "Maybe the previous owners left some in the tank," Maria said. But she didn't sound convinced either. She drew Emma close, and when her palm touched the girl's forearm, Emma realized how cold her own skin had gone. They ate sandwiches on the porch. The night rose from the grass like steam. Crickets thickened their chorus until it became a fabric of sound, a woven blanket turned tight around the house. From the far field, a single long bovine wail lifted and then guttered, ending in a wet gasp that made Maria put her plate down. A soft, intermittent tap began under the porch, tick, 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 as if someone decided to count the boards and kept losing their place. Jake Daniels said, "Get the flashlight." They crossed the yard, the beam jittering over tufts of grass and the heel prints they'd left like scars. The barn's doors were heavy and unhappy. It took both Daniel and Jake to pry them apart. As the doors shifted deep, wood groans stacked on groans, and a shower of dust hissed down like dry rain. Chains hanging from the rafters chinked together, not in the easy, random way of things that move when air moves, but in small, careful conversations. Somewhere near the loft, rope fibers whispered against wood a ska that felt like the sound a throat would make if it remembered a knot. "Stay by me," Maria told Emma. That floor's spotted with rot. The flashlight painted everything in a white that wasn't any kind of comfort. Tools leaned in rows, their edges dull but not blunt. A hoe stood point down in a packed earth trench, unmistakably placed, not dropped. The wooden shaft had been worn to a smooth warmth, where hands had held it and held it and held it. Emma heard it before she saw it, the steady subterranean thud of iron teeth meeting soil, a heartbeat too slow for any animal, too deliberate for any wind thud. Drag. Thud. And beneath that low and bull-thick a rumble that could only be the barn's old cattle speaking from a throat that should have been empty for 20 years. Jake swore under his breath. Nope. Language Maria said automatic, but her voice went rope-taut. The trench traced a line from the doorway toward a wall where an old ledger shelf leaned. Daniel ran the beam over it. The shelf held nothing but a single jar, inside a loop of darkened rope. A tag hung from the jar's mouth on a rusted pin. The tag read, "For tethering." "What's that smell?" Emma asked. They all smelled it then, sweet and copper sour, a barn smell, amplified like hay gone rotten and something else gone wrong. Daniel set the jar back with a clink. The clink went off in the barn like a bell, tiny crystalline, then came back to them 2, 3, 4 times, as if the rafters enjoyed playing echo. High above, pigeons exploded into wing noise, wuff, 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 before settling again with irritated coos that sounded too human to be birds. "Enough," Maria said. "We'll deal with the barn in daylight." On their way out, Emma paused by a wall where deep gouges marked the timber at shoulder height. Not claw marks, not random. As if someone had carved tally lines with the edge of a blade and stopped when the count reached 52. Emma pressed her fingers to the grooves. "What were you measuring?" she whispered. From the dark behind the ledger shelf came a slow, deliberate scrape wood on packed earth, like a crate being dragged an inch at a time by hands that weren't eager, but weren't ever going to stop. The scrape repeated scrap, pause, scrap, and each pause felt like a breath taken by something that didn't need air but enjoyed the ritual. They left. They shut the barn doors. They stacked a fallen board across the handles because Daniel said he didn't trust the wind. Back in the house, they spread bedding. They went room by room and called out claim. Jake took the narrow back room with the window that looked across the pasture. Emma got the room under the eaves, where the wallpaper peeled in vine-shaped curls. Nana claimed the small room on the first floor so she wouldn't have to climb. Maria and Daniel took the front bedroom, where the moon would hang like a photographer's lamp if the clouds cooperated. When the house settled for the night, it did not settle quietly. Floorboards sighed. A pipe knocked. A puckered little whine slid through the keyhole as wind tested the lock with cool lips. Beyond the windows, cattle lowing murmured up from the dark, softer now, like the kind of talking people do when they think they're alone. Emma lay awake and listened. She told herself it was creaks and animals and the old skin of a house learning their weight. She told herself no place could hate. Places changed. People changed. Nana said the farm had good bones the way an old horse has a good heart, even if it stumbles. You listen to a place, Nana had said. You listen first. It'll tell you what it wants. Somewhere between midnight and whatever hour the birds haven't invented yet, the distinct rhythmic bite of a hoe into earth started again. Chunk. Pause. Chunk. Close enough that Emma could feel the beat in her pillow. A deep, damp bellow rolled through the yard and broke into a wet cough, and then into a string of pathetic, mewling lows that sounded like regret being spoken out loud. In the kitchen, something glass ticked tick-tick against wood periodic patient like a jar lid being touched by a finger that never warms. Emma sat up. She held her breath until her lungs begged. When she couldn't hold it anymore, she let air back in, and along with the air came a whisper. It lived between walls. It perched on the stair. It didn't use words. It used the shapes of words. It made the shape of her name. She was up bare feet on cool floorboards across the hall, down the stairs, the house laid out around her like a map she already knew how to read. In the kitchen, the jar labeled "for tethering" sat exactly where Daniel had put it, but the rope inside it had changed its shape. It now formed a careful noose, the knot neat the loop wide enough to fit a person's throat who had stopped arguing with the idea. From outside, the rope on the barn beam answered with one slow, thick creak, the kind of sound a body makes when it gives up its mind. At the same instant, the tractor gave a soft, involuntary cough, foot, like a sick animal turning in its sleep. Then farther away from the field's edge came the whispering slide of kernels against wood, as if a bin of grain remembered falling and decided to rehearse the sound of suffocation. Emma's knees went loose. Something brushed her ankle. She yelped and looked down. A hen no bigger than a lapful of feathers stood there, eyes liquid black in the moonlit kitchen. It tilted its head, opened its beak. No sound came out of the hen, but the silence it produced felt like a noise big enough to break a glass. A heartbeat later, the house delivered a single sharp knock from the front door. Bam! Like a fist, with no patience. Emma screamed. In the upstairs hallway, feet hit the floor. Daniel's heavy run, Maria's sharp sprint, Jake's thudding jump from the bed, Nana's quick shuffle that shouldn't have been quick at all. They met in the kitchen. The hen was gone. The jar sat innocent. The front door stood closed. "We are going to town tomorrow," Maria said, voice shaking. "We are buying salt. We are buying sage. We are buying new locks." Daniel put his arm around her shoulders and steered them all back upstairs. First night jitters. New house noises. Emma's hand shook too hard to hold her phone. When she finally lay back down, she kept her eyes open until the window grayed. The prairie didn't own a dawn, it endured one. When it came dawn, announced itself with a thin ribbon of sparrow chirping, then a hesitant rooster call from a coop that had been empty since Reagan. And underneath both, as if a basement choir had found its pitch, the low, steady thrum of cattle breath filled the yard, nen patient, wet and sure. Emma slept for 20 minutes. In that sleep, a hand she couldn't see pressed a hoe into her palm and guided it to the earth. She lifted. She drove. The blade bit. The earth let go. And in the place they dug the ground, not the air. But the ground answered with a single syllable, thick and human, and full of the taste of rust. No. She woke with her hand in a fist and a smear of dirt on her sheet, and the sense that Stillwater Farm could hear them. The farm had heard people before. It remembered every word, and it had a way it wanted them to speak. From the barn in the bright, good day that should have made monsters improbable, the rope creaked again, like the beginning of a conversation. Somewhere in the field, a hoe struck chunk and stopped as if it were waiting for a reply. And from the cow lane deep and close, now a bellow rolled louder than before, stacking on itself until it wasn't any animal at all. But a man's grief poured through a horn. Emma stood. She would not answer with words. She would answer by listening. The Whitakers had survived their first night in the old farmhouse, but the air inside felt like a guest that refused to leave. Every room had its own smell, its own sigh, its own complaint. When the morning sun slanted through the torn curtains, it didn't chase shadows away. It only revealed where the shadows had chosen to settle. Daniel busied himself with repairs. He hammered loose shingles back into place, tightened hinges, swept dust off the porch. His shoulders moved with the kind of rhythm a man uses when he wants to keep from thinking too much. Maria unpacked the kitchen, arranging dishes on shelves whose wood felt too soft, as though the boards had been soaked in something other than water. Emma followed Nana outside, careful to step where the grass grew short. Jake lingered near the SUV with his headphones, but never put them on. He said he wanted to keep one ear open, which made Maria frown, though she didn't argue. From the barn, a rope creaked in the rafters, long, heavy, drawn out, as if something had just shifted its weight. Across the field, a lone crow cawed sharp and metallic, breaking the silence in pieces. Somewhere under the porch, a soft tick-tick-tick returned slow and patient like fingernails tapping wood. "Stop it," Jake muttered, stomping on the porch boards. The tapping stopped. By noon, Daniel announced it was time to clear the barn. "We can't keep being afraid of it," he said. "It's just a building. Wood and nails. Nothing more." Emma clutched Nana's hand, but curiosity pushed harder than fear. Together, the family crossed the yard. The sunlight should have made the barn ordinary, but its timbers seemed to drink the light, leaving the doorway darker than night. As Daniel pried the doors open, the wood groaned like an animal waking from a wound. Dust rained down in a hiss, landing on their shoulders like cold ash. A chain dangling from the rafters clinked, clink, clink, as though stirred by breath instead of breeze. Inside, the smell of soil and rust wrapped around them. The trench Emma had seen the night before, still cut across the floor deeper now, its edges fresh as if someone had been digging all morning. Jake kicked at the dirt. Some animal's been at it. Nana shook her head. No animal digs straight lines. Emma spotted something glinting in the trench. She crouched and picked up a small rusted buckle, the kind that might have belonged to a work belt. It felt warm, too warm for metal left in shade. From the corner, a hoe fell over with a sharp clang against the floor, even though no one had touched it. The sound rang like a bell in a church no one prayed in. Almost immediately, the soft shuffle of boots dragged across the dirt dragged steps, circling them though. No footprints appeared. Maria clutched Daniel's arm. "That's enough. We've seen it. We're leaving it shut." But Daniel shook his head. "No. We have to face it." On the far wall, Emma noticed a shelf with a leather-bound book lying open. Dust covered everything else in the barn, but the book's pages were clean, as if someone had turned them just this morning. She leaned in. The handwriting was sharp, angry. Each line listed a crop corn, barley, beans. But beneath the neat rows were notes scrawled in darker ink. Taken, withheld, debt not paid. And at the bottom of the last page, a jagged sketch of a noose. The pages rustled by themselves, fluttering flap, 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 though the air inside the barn was perfectly still. A low murmur followed, like voices arguing just below, hearing words slipping between the cracks of wood. Emma slammed the book shut. The murmur stopped. Jake muttered, "This place is alive." Nana whispered, "No, not alive. Remembering." By evening, the family tried to reclaim normalcy. Maria cooked a stew on the old stove, though every bite tasted faintly of iron. Daniel poured himself whiskey he'd hidden in the moving boxes. Jake sat at the window with his flashlight, ready, daring the dark to show itself. Emma refused to sleep alone and crawled into Nana's bed. When the sun disappeared, the crickets began their endless song again, louder than the night before, a suffocating blanket of chirps. From the barn, the rope groaned once, twice, as though tested by invisible weight. The distant cow bellowed deep and hollow, ending in a wet rattle that shook the glass in the windows. Maria whispered to Daniel, "We shouldn't stay here." Daniel shook his head. "This is ours now." Land doesn't scare me." The house answered him with a sudden knock beneath the floorboards. Bam! So hard, Nana cried out. Immediately after, footsteps ran across the attic, quick, frantic patter, though no one had gone upstairs. Jake bolted upright. "Tell me you heard that they all had." That night, Emma dreamed, or thought she dreamed. She found herself standing in the trench inside the barn. The soil was wet, clinging to her shoes. A man stood before her, tall shoulders, bent eyes black with soil. His skin was cracked like dry earth, and in his hands he held the hoe. He raised it slowly, as if offering it to her. The sound of the hoe's blade biting into soil filled her ears. Chunk dragged chunk over and over, until it drowned out her own heartbeat. Behind him, the cows roared, their voices overlapping into a monstrous chorus, vibrating the air until her bones shook. The rope above them swayed, creak, creak, each swing like a sentence she couldn't understand. The man's mouth opened. Dirt poured out instead of words. It cascaded down his chest, filling the trench, burying her feet. She screamed, but no sound came. She woke with dirt under her fingernails. Maria found Emma at dawn, sitting at the kitchen table, pale and shaking. In front of her sat the jar marked "for tethering." The noose inside had grown tighter, smaller, as though waiting for a neck. The jar rattled once, tick-tick, without anyone touching it. From outside, the tractor coughed awake, chug, choke, chug, then died again, leaving only silence. Daniel slammed the jar into a drawer and locked it. "No more talk of this. We're staying. That's final." But Nana whispered, "The land doesn't bargain. It collects." The third day at Stillwater Farm carried with it a heaviness that pressed against every breath. The sky was gray, not storm gray, but the gray of a lid clamped over a boiling pot. The Whitakers moved through the house like players in a rehearsal they did not remember signing up for. Daniel worked in the barn. Maria tried to keep the kitchen alive. Emma sat with Nana, who told half-finished stories, her words trailing off as though someone else were whispering the endings. Jake kept the flashlight at his side, even in daylight. From the barn came the steady creak-creak of rope. Each note stretched long like a pendulum, marking the hour of something that should not be measured. Out in the field, the tractor coughed again, fut-fut, then gurgled to silence the air, thick with phantom gasoline. Somewhere in the house, the walls popped sharp, hollow bangs that sounded too deliberate for settling wood. Daniel decided enough was enough. He carried the hoe from the barn and planted it upright in the yard. "It's just a tool," he told the family. "Steel and wood. It only does what a man makes it do." Emma shook her head. "It doesn't want to be here." The hoe shifted by itself, blade scraping against the stones, like a knife being sharpened. Daniel's face hardened. "See, wind, gravity. You people let your minds run wild." But Jake muttered, "Dad, wind doesn't push metal uphill by dusk, clouds stacked high above the prairie." The family ate in silence, every clink of spoon against bowl too loud. When the first thunder rolled rumble, it seemed to rise not from the sky, but from the ground beneath the house. Rain hammered the roof in uneven bursts, tat-tat-tat, like footsteps running across tin. The barn groaned, timbers flexing, while the rope squealed against its beam in a cry that almost formed words. Mariah covered her ears. "I can't stand it." Nana whispered, "It's the farmer. He's still here. He's still angry." The wind shoved the shutters until they banged bang-bang like fists demanding to be let in. Then, in the middle of the storm, the lights flickered on. Every bulb in the house glowed yellow, though the realtor had sworn there was no power line yet. Emma gasped. It's him. From the barn windows, lantern light flared, casting shadows of cows that weren't there, their lowing thick and guttural moo rolling across the rain. Daniel stormed into the barn with a flashlight soaked to the bone. Enough, he roared. This land is mine now. You can't have it. The family followed to the doorway, too terrified to enter. Inside, the trench had deepened into a pit. The hoe lay across it, gleaming as if freshly oiled. Daniel grabbed it. Steel and wood, he said again. The sound came instantly, the sickening thunk as the hoe's blade slammed down, not by his hand, but through it, burying itself into his skull. The crack of bone echoed chirararak, reverberating through the barn beams. Blood hissed as it spilled onto the earth, absorbed eagerly by the soil, as though it had been waiting. Maria screamed. Emma buried her face in Nana's dress. Jake pulled at his mother's arm to flee. The rope above swung, creaking wildly, creak, 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 cheering the death with each sway. From the shadows, a chorus of phantom cows bellowed, wah, wah, mocking grief with grotesque celebration. Daniel's body collapsed into the pit. The soil moved, swallowing him inch by inch, until no trace remained. The storm stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The lights flickered out, plunging everything into black. Maria sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her children. I won't let this place take us, she whispered. But later that night, when the family tried to sleep, Maria heard the kitchen door swing open. She rose, following the noise. The hinges moaned, "Aye," long and painful, like lungs giving out. The floorboards popped under unseen feet, pop, 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 heading toward the barn. She followed, lantern in hand, until she stood at the barn's mouth. The rope inside swayed as though something had just leapt from it. Then she felt it around her neck. The rope yanked tight with a violent snap, and her scream cut off into choking gasps. G-g, as her feet kicked against the air. The beam groaned under the strain, creak, while the barn filled with the sick rhythm of strangled breath. Emma and Jake found her body hanging at dawn. All morning, the house echoed with the sound of tools hammers banging. Bang, bang, though no one swung them, saws screeching screech, cutting wood that wasn't there. From the cellar, the grinding churn of a thresher roared, metallic teeth spinning whir, clank, whir, though no machine had fuel. Emma clutched Nana. It wants all of us. Nana nodded. The land remembers. It always collects its debts. The farmhouse was no longer a home. It was a throat swallowing one Whitaker at a time. With Daniel buried in the earth and Maria swinging from the rafters, only three remained: Jake, Emma, and Nana Rose. They huddled together in the parlor, curtains drawn. The air was thick with dust that hadn't been there yesterday, as though the house itself exhaled from lungs clogged with soil. From outside came the groan of the tractor chug-chug cough, though no one had touched its engine. The barn door slammed open with a violent bang, then shut again, bang, like someone impatient to finish the job. Across the ceiling, footsteps pattered pitter-patter, quick and light, too small for Daniel, too late for Maria. Jake couldn't take it anymore. His hands shook as he grabbed the flashlight and stormed outside. "This place thinks it can scare us," he shouted into the dark. "I'm not afraid of some dead farmer," the field answered with a low, rolling moo so deep it shook the ground under his sneakers. From the barn came the screech of metal gears, grinding screech like a machine waking from rust. The tractor headlights flicked on by themselves. Its engine roared to life, coughing smoke blades spinning. "Jake, don't," Emma screamed from the porch. but Jake ran forward, waving the flashlight. "It's a machine, that's all it is," the tractor growled, "Vroom," rattling the earth gears, screaming as if hungry. The thud, thud, thud of its heavy tires rolled closer, pounding like war drums. Jake tried to leap aside, but the soil beneath his feet softened like wet clay. His legs sank, pinning him. The machine bellowed louder, "Bee-wo-bee-wee-yo-wang," before its front blade slammed into him with a sickening crunch. Bones snapped crack under its weight. The grinding teeth chewed metallic and wet as flesh and earth mixed together. Emma screamed until her throat tore. Nana pulled her back inside as Jake's body disappeared beneath the machine's path, leaving only churned mud, dark with blood. That night, Emma didn't sleep. She sat by Nana's bed, staring at the noose-shaped shadow cast by the moonlight on the wall. Every few minutes, the barn's rope creaked, creak, creak, like a lullaby for the dead. Somewhere below in the cellar, the sound of kernels sliding chirrup echoed, as though grain poured endlessly into a pit. At dawn, Emma woke to silence. Too much silence. Nana wasn't breathing. Her body was still her face pale, and tiny dark birds perched on the windowsill. The birds croaked, crow, crow, like crows waiting for a feast. Emma sobbed, backing away. She was the last. The barn seemed to call her name. She heard it between the gusts of wind and the cracks of the wood. Emma. She walked in barefoot, trembling. The pit in the center was deeper now. Boards led to the old grain bin, its hatch open. From within came the soft rush of grain, psh, psh, pouring though no one poured it. The air echoed with whispers, layered voices, chanting in rhythm with the shifting kernels, det, det, det. Emma stepped closer. She saw Jake's shoe in the grain, then her mother's scarf, then something glistening like Daniel's watch. She screamed, trying to pull back. The grain erupted with a roar, shh, roosh, rising like a living tide, grabbing her legs, pulling her in. She thrashed, kicking, but the sound of rushing grain grew louder, fip, fate, 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 shh, burying her cries. Above the rope swung madly creak, 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 applauding her struggle. Her hands clawed for the edge nails, snapping crick, crick against wood. The grain swallowed her chest, her throat, her mouth. Her last scream muffled into silence as she disappeared beneath the suffocating sea. That night the farm was quiet again. Then slowly every light in the barn flickered on glowing yellow through the cracks. Cows lowed in chorus, moo, moo, though none stood in the fields. From the empty stall came the steady thunk of a hoe and soil thud. Drag, thud, never ending. And when the clock struck midnight, the rope in the rafters stretched tight again, waiting for the next family foolish enough to call Stillwater home. The farmhouse was silent now. Emma was gone, taken by the grain bin Jake devoured beneath the machine, Maria swinging in the rafters, Daniel buried by the hoe. Only Nana Rose remained, her frail body trembling as she moved from room to room. Her eyes looked too large in her wrinkled face, as though they were trying to see through walls to pierce the memories pressed into the beams. She whispered prayers under her breath, prayers she hadn't spoken in 50 years. From the barn came the low groan of wood-creac timbers shifting under invisible weight. The rope swayed once, twice with a slow, rhythmic squeal, eek, eek. Somewhere in the house, the pipes rattled, clang, clang, like chains dragged across iron. Nana Rose clutched her rosary tighter. "You've had them all," she whispered into the stillness. "Take me last if you must, but don't leave me wandering." At twilight, the sound began. Wings flapped against the windows, woof, woof, again and again as black birds gathered on the sills. Their claws scratched the glass, scritch, scritch, etching thin lines into the pane. Their voices croaked in unison, crow, crow, like a funeral choir. Nana pulled the curtain shut, but still she heard them. She shuffled toward the kitchen. That was when she saw them inside. Dozens of black chickens crowded the floorboards, their feathers matted eyes gleaming like beads of oil. They clucked softly, not like farm birds, but like voices trying to mimic words. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Each sound thick and wrong, echoing like laughter buried in mud. The bird circled her chair. Nana sat down, too tired to move. The first bird leapt onto her lap. Its beak opened wide. The wet snap of flesh, tearing scrip, split the air as it bit into her arm. The flutter of wings exploded around her, woof, 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 as more piled onto her shoulders, her legs, her throat. Her screams rose, ah, but were drowned by the furious chorus of squawking crew, crew. Claws raked her face, peeling skin like paper. Beaks tore at her hands, pulling away strips of flesh. She fell backward, but the chickens swarmed, their bodies heavy, their feathers suffocating. The sound of pecking grew relentless, tuck, 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 like nails hammering a coffin shut. Her bones cracked, crack under the frenzy of sharp beaks. Nana's cries weakened her body, jerking once, twice, before stillness claimed her. The birds feasted until nothing moved. By midnight, the house was quiet. No family remained. Only shadows and echoes filled the rooms. Then the barn lit up. Every lamp flickered on glowing yellow through the cracks. The sound of cows filled the air, moo, moo, long and hollow, though no cattle had walked those fields in decades. The hoe struck soil again, thunk, drag, thunk, each blow measured like a heartbeat. The rope groaned as it tightened, creak, creak, waiting for the next neck. Through the windows of the farmhouse, the light from the barn stretched across the fields, painting the grass in pale, sickly yellow. The air reeked of soil blood and iron. If any traveler had passed on the road, they would have seen it a farmhouse, dark, silent, forgotten, except for the barn. And in that barn, lit as if by lanterns hung from the rafters, shadows of cows and men worked the soil endlessly, voices whispering debts owed debts, paid debts still waiting. The final sound of the night was unmistakable. A deep, wet bellow that rose from the earth itself, buobio, echoing for miles, announcing that Stillwater Farm had fed again.